Welcome you to the regular meeting of West Valley City Council. We call our meeting to order. We note that we have a full council quorum present, all members here. We will begin with an opening ceremony. We turn to Councilman Lars Nordfeldt for that. I'm sorry, what? Am I on the wrong? I'm on the wrong week.
It's coming.
I apologize, I am on last week's agenda. You mean it helps if I get the right one? Okay. And now I'm on study meeting, I'll get there yet. There we go, I think. May 10th, all right. Everything's the same so far, now, I don't have to redo any of that, except our opening ceremony will be Councilmember Tom Hune.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to invite all of you to stand up and do a legend with us. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. My fat fingers push the wrong buttons, so it's good to have council members help me along here. Next, we check and see if we have any groups here special. We note that we have our youth council here, or at least portions of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not all of them, though. So, what will we be doing with that? Are they later in the program? Huh?
We've got a resolution later in the program.
Oh, okay. So although we recognize you won't have to say anything at this moment, there are no other groups that I see, just visitors and interested citizens. With that, we'll go then to the approval of the minutes of April 26th.
Mayor, I move for approval of our minutes from April 26th.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion on the minutes, we'll place that for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of April 26th, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously. The minutes are approved. Next, we go to our public comment period. And I don't have anything in front of me, so no one signed up, but we do have a period of time for public comment. Is there anyone here who wants to make any comments on any issues? Not this time. So, okay. No public comments, then to the city manager for any comments?
No thanks, sir. I'm good.
To the council for any comments?
I just have one.
Okay.
I attended an out-of-state high school graduation last night for my granddaughter, and this morning I was reading in their city newspaper that in 1869, on this date, an event happened in Utah that connected the two ends of the country together. We drove a last spike for the Transcontinental Railroad today, several years ago. And we didn't even mention it in Utah, but it was mentioned in New Mexico, so I think we ought to remember that today is the driving of the Golden Spike.
Very appropriate, and I believe there have been a few newspaper articles and even some items on the television. I saw them earlier, but not today. I haven't seen anything today. Of course, I haven't watched anything today. So, but very appropriate, significant event that was referred to as the tying the country together. It was almost that. There's only a little bit of track left to lay. But it was designed that way. They were still trekking that over. So thank you very much. With that then, we'll go to item 7 on our agenda, our ordinances. We go to ordinance 16-17, which amends our code to reflect the approval of the international codes that was adopted by the legislature. We're bringing our code into compliance with that to ensure we're on the same page. That's probably enough indication of that. With that then, fairly straightforward and routine. We have to do it, so to speak, pretty well to stay in line. So to the council then, for any comments or actions.
Mayor, seems that I use these codes every day in my work. I will move for approval of ordinance 16-17.
Second.
Motion and a second. Very appropriate for you to make that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, to our city recorder, take a roll call vote.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
Councilwoman Lang?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Yoon?
Aye.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nordfeld?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We next go to item 8 on our agenda. We have several items there. Resolutions. We'll start with resolution 16-72. Support the efforts of the West Valley City Youth City Council to educate the city's youth concerning the hazards of electronic cigarettes, which is a very, very worthwhile endeavor. Now, I believe that with our youth council here, although it's not normally our custom, would the council like to hear comments from them? Would not be on our agenda. We'd have to change any rules. I just look to you for what you would like to do, I think. Or you're all quiet.
Mayor, I guess I'll make a motion that we modify the agenda and allow comment from our youth city council at this point.
Second.
Thank you. Appreciate that. That motion is before us. I guess we ought to vote on that before. Doesn't require a roll call vote. Okay. So all in favor of modifying our agenda and allow a comment or two from our youth council on this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion passed unanimously. We're going to look to you and just come up and make a few comments. Or
Hello, my name is Nelson Lotz, and I am the Deputy Mayor for the Youth City Council of West Valley. And the Youth City Council has been trying to promote the interests of the youth in the community, especially here in West Valley. And it has come to our attention that one of the most dangerous things to the youth today is the use of electronic cigarettes. Just recently, the FDA passed new rules that really outline the dangers of these, and new reports have come out that outline that now 15% of all people in high school have used electronic cigarettes, and this has been an increase by 900%. Now, the exact effects of these electronic cigarettes have not been fully known yet, but it has been clear that they have been linked to some serious harms, including addiction and more physical harms. And because of this, the Youth City Council has decided to try to educate the public and to gain your support in this endeavor so that we can really reach out to the youth and let them know of this health hazard. Thank you.
thank you very much. And so you're, I'm sure, speaking for the whole youth council, and I assume it was unanimous among them. Yeah. So with that, back to the council for any comments or.
Having read the resolution, I think it's a good resolution and something where we can fully support the Youth City Council in these efforts to educate the students in West Valley City. And so I would move that we approve Resolution 16-72.
Second.
It's properly before us. Yes.
We have Councilmember Bueller.
Yes, I
Oh,
think
that's right.
that I was scheduled to read that. I'd be happy to do that. We could do that after the vote, after we've approved it, or we could read it before to see if we want to approve it.
I think you should read it first.
Go ahead.
A resolution supporting the efforts of the West Valley City Youth City Council to educate the city's youth concerning the hazards of electronic cigarettes. Whereas the West Valley City Youth City Council, the Youth Council, is established by ordinance to encourage the youth of the city to participate in city government and public affairs, and whereas the Youth Council assists the City Council in understanding the challenges faced by the young people of the city, and whereas the Youth Council has become aware of dramatically increasing rates of electronic cigarette use among youth in the city, and whereas emerging research indicates that electronic cigarette use is connected to a number of health risks, and whereas over 22,000 Utah junior high and high school students use electronic cigarettes on a regular basis, and whereas the rate of electronic cigarette usage among junior high and high school students has doubled in Salt Lake County since 2013, and whereas electronic cigarettes frequently contain nicotine, a highly addictive substance with substantial health risks for users, and whereas the health of the citizens of West Valley City, particularly the youth of the city, is of paramount importance to the city, and whereas the Youth Council desires to work to educate the youth of the city concerning the hazards of electronic cigarette usage, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of West Valley City, Utah, that the City Council supports the efforts of the Youth Council to discourage electronic cigarette usage among the youth of the city, and that the City Council commends the Youth Council for their efforts and activism in promoting the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the city.
Any further comments?
I would note that I saw in the news this week that the FDA is going to be vigorously regulating e-cigarettes. I don't know if they've been looking to our Youth Council and took their cue there, or if they'd already been studying that issue before last week when it was brought to our attention. But it's good to see you on the same page.
Anything else? Then to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfeld,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Vincent,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we go to Resolution 16-73. This is to authorize the city to enter into an amendment on the lease with Hale Center Theater. Their lease expires at the end of this year. This would extend that lease, that essentially the same rates of revenue from them, their lease agreement, through the end of 2017. They had anticipated moving and occupying their theater sooner, but obviously a number of problems arose, and we have agreed that this will be beneficial to us and them as we work through the use of that theater, and so the lease is proposed to be extended. That is the issue before us. With that introduction then to the council.
Mayor, I move for approval of Resolution 1673.
Second.
Further comments? And so that you're aware, we have visitors. We have discussed these in previous meetings. We take our final action here. So if there aren't a lot of comments or questions, it's because we've had them taken care of in a previous meeting. Sometimes there are more, sometimes less on these. These are pretty straightforward. With that then, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
Councilwoman Lang?
Yes.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilman Hune?
Aye.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nordfeld?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next we go to Resolution 16-74. This is to award a contract. We have our Cultural Celebration Center that has not been completed. A significant portion of the basement area of that is literally unfinished. Some dirt, some gravel floors. It is enclosed, but water seeps up moisture through that. We have some temporary wood flooring down in certain locations. It's just never been finished. We have received a grant from Salt Lake County to assist in completing that. This would award the contract to Layton Construction to finish out the basement and work on those items that are included in the contract. Good thing to get it finished. With that introduction, then we will turn to the council, see if you're ready for a motion.
I move for approval of resolution 16-74.
Second?
We have the motion and the second before us. Any further discussion? This is one we've actually discussed in multiple previous meetings, quite a few different meetings, to get it to the point that we feel it's right. With that then, we'll turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfeld,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
No.
Councilman Vincent,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes by majority.
Thank you very much. Next, we have before us Resolution 16-75, an agreement between us and Utah Transit Authority, UTA, for rerouting of bus rapid transit service here around Fairborn Station. With the change that is taking place back there in our redeveloping items and the part of the master plan that has been set up for a number of years, this is the next step in developing a street and then working with UTA to allow for a rerouting of buses, because that will change the entrance there, and there will be ultimately a light placed there that will allow access into that area a little bit easier way. But we need to coordinate with UTA, since they have an approved easement for their bus routes out on 3500 South. By entering into this agreement, we've worked out all of the details of that as a part of our ongoing commitment to redevelop here at the center of our city. With that introduction, then, I'll turn to the council for comments or for a motion.
Mayor, I move for approval of resolution 16-75.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. It's properly before us. Any further discussion or comments? Seeing none, we'll turn to our city recorder to take the vote.
Councilman Vincent,
Yes.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Nordfeld,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Next, we have Resolution 16-76, which is a master lease agreement with the Municipal Building Authority of West Valley and a ground lease agreement authorizing the issuance and sale of a lease revenue funding bonds, and I'm trying to decide what to cover here. These are bonds in the amount of $36 million, and these will also be addressed in a meeting following this, in our redevelopment agency meeting. And so maybe,
Or building authority.
oh, excuse me, you're right, building authority meeting. And so there are numerous steps that we go through, especially in the issuing of bonds. These will basically take our existing bonds, it's kind of along the lines of a refinancing, and allows us to take advantage of lower interest rates, which then in return we pay out less money as a city. Based upon recommendations from legal and bond counsel, this is an opportune time to make those decisions. And then those bonds will, there will be additional option for the revenues that we then save to do other things. And in talking in that earlier, those funds, some of those funds will be used for possibly future fire stations. Is that the right way to state that? I know there was some clarification on the wording.
Would you like me to add any detail on that?
Yes.
Mayor, as far, okay. So maybe the one point, which would also add clarity, is the $36 million, a portion of that is refunding and refinance, just as you said. And the approximate amount of that is $29 million. And then there's the possibility and the addition of $7 million, which makes up the $36 million, which would be for the possible inclusion and building of new fire stations, as we had discussed earlier.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate that. Anything else? With that then, we'll turn to the council for comment or action.
So for myself, I still think I need more time to get some more information, so I would move for continuance of 16-76.
Is there a second to that motion? Motion is properly before us. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to ask the question, what does continuing this for another week do as far as the closing of the bond? And
I don't think it has, pardon me, a little closer. I don't think it has any detrimental effect. The farther out we get, of course, as Ms. Lewis spoke to in the earlier meeting, there is an approach where we appoint and we start affecting the bond issuance parameters, timing, extra costs, possibly extra interest, that sort of thing. But I don't think a week. Is Laura here? Yeah, there you are.
We'll be
Okay.
fine.
If a week was what we were thinking, I
Just
think
one
we're
week.
fine.
So it is just 1 week. 1 week won't make a difference, but there has to come a point, I think, in that where it will make a difference, and that's probably 2, 3 weeks?
3 weeks will be a challenge.
3 weeks would be a challenge.
Followed by that thing.
I think that's clarification. Didn't mean to interact with the audience, but apologize for that. But to clarify your point,
Just till next week.
okay. And then that will be incumbent upon Mr. Pyle and the staff to make sure that, things are clarified to the point that we've got that all worked out to the satisfaction of all the council members, with any questions they have. With that then, seeing no further comments, to our city recorder for a vote.
Councilman Nordfeld,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Vincent,
yes.
Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion for continuance is approved.
Okay. With that then, next on our agenda is Resolution 16-77, adopting a tentative budget for the fiscal year of July 1st through June 30th, starting this July 1st through June 30th of next year. And setting August 9th as our date for our public hearing. Adopting the current budget essentially keeps us functioning along the same lines as we have been functioning during the current year. There's been no additions to the budget. We are simply funding that budget for now. There will be additional items looked at, discussions held about modifying the budget, discussions held about possible revenue changes, and certainly we always do at that point our adjustment to our property tax rate, if any, for any adjustments that need to be made there. The property tax issue is that it is based on a set rate. Same amount of tax will be collected each year, though, based upon court cases and resolution of appeals. Sometimes that changes individual tax amounts, and therefore to keep the same revenue flowing in, we adjust the rate slightly. That's one of the issues. And so, but there are many that will face us as we discuss the budget over the next couple of months, and hope to have those very clear and resolved by August 9th. Did I leave anything out on that? Anyone wants to add? And Mr. Pyle, you're always welcome to add items. And so, and just as a comment for that, for our youth council, Mr. Pyle functions as an ad hoc member of the committee, therefore can speak and be recognized on any issue. He just can't vote because he's not elected, but he is a member of the council. So just thought I'd just clarify that for you. So he functions essentially as a part of our council, and a very necessary part of that under our form of government. With that then, to the council.
Mayor, I think that the other items that we need to discuss should probably be adopted with this tentative budget, so that as we go about discussing the budget and discussing those other items, there won't be surprises to the public and everything else. So I would move that we amend, if necessary, the tentative budget to include those items that Mr. Pyle has presented to us as possibilities.
Okay, just for the chair's,
Long spreadsheet that he gave us last week.
you're adopting them as possibilities, or are they
Things that we would be discussing with part of the budget to make
but
sure
not
that they are.
adopting them as a part of the budget?
Right now, they are not in the tentative budget. They're still out there as planned items, but to get them into the budget, we need to make sure that they are with the budget as we start discussing it.
Okay. Councilman Vincent?
Just my comment is that this is a tentative budget, so I don't think we need to do that, because this is tentative. And we know that there will be modifications and adjustments over the next couple of months.
And Mayor, my comment would be that not only is it a tentative budget, it's a one-year budget. And many of those things stretched into the future as far as repayments and so forth. But also, the tentative budget that's proposed includes an anticipated increase in property taxes of 5.3%. That's part of the tentative budget, or the proposed tentative budget as I see it here. And so I think that is on the table. Am I understanding that right, Mr. Pond? I mean, when I look at our revenue.
Mr. Pond?
I'll try to help and add clarification if I can in the conversation. So, as Councilman Christensen has proposed, basically what you would be doing, as I understand it, is you'd be adopting the tentative budget with the numbers that are included right now, which is essentially a flat budget, as the mayor mentioned, minus, I think it's like $100,000 plus change out of approximately a $73 million budget. An alternative that would include what Councilman Christensen is including would basically say, we're going to adopt the tentative budget plus the items that the city manager had recommended for consideration, which would include that spreadsheet, my understanding, that spreadsheet for the one-year inclusions, not the longer-term unrecommended or unfunded capital things that I had. You'll remember I had this column said future consideration. So that would be one way to accomplish what Councilman Christensen is asking. Another alternative, well, maybe I should additionally explain to that. In order to do that, what you would need and what that would reflect in the actual tentative budget would be a bottom line that would include on the expenditure side those items that I had recommended from the list standpoint. And on the revenue side, you could approach it two ways, and this goes to the property tax question that Councilman Bueller asked. So you could include all of that amount that's extra on the expenditure side and match it on the revenue side out of unreserved fund balance, and then reserve the conversation to be had over the next couple of months, basically stating that as being undetermined as to how it would be funded or not funded. That would be one way to approach it. The other way to approach it would be to include and reflect the property tax increase recommendation And of course, it is, as the mayor mentioned, a tentative budget, so you wouldn't be officially adopting that. You simply would be including that as a tentative budget number that would be for consideration in the upcoming months. So, and by the way, the actual property tax increase, I think, I'm not sure where the 5.3% number came from, other than the increase from last year to this year. Is that possibly where that number is coming from?
Just looking at the property tax line, it says, we've got our actual for 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014, 2014, 2015, 2015, 2016.
And then has a projected change.
And a percent change for that proposed.
Okay, all right. The actual property tax increase, as we talked about it in the recommendation, would be for a dollar amount of $2 million, which equates to about an 8% increase. So that's why I just wanted to clarify where that number came from. So anyway, the other thing I might mention to Councilman Christensen's proposal is, in a normal budget year, that's exactly how you would see it. You'd see it with the revenue projections, the expenditure projections, all of them. And you might not show the revenue projections as including a tax increase. You would have a plug number, basically, an unreserved fund balance or other sources that would represent whatever that amount of money is that you're talking about from a undetermined standpoint. This year we approached it a little differently because the request was to show a budget without any changes and without any kind of additions at all. So I just add that from the standpoint of, it's not unusual or out of line in an understanding or a proposal standpoint what Councilman Christensen's proposing. That's how actually we would normally show it. I was thinking about a third alternative too in terms of how you could adopt the tentative budget, but now the thought escapes me, so I probably have gone as far as I could go with that. So alternatives, again, adopt it as it shows right now and consider the increases in the ensuing weeks as we go forward to August. Or it certainly is doable to adopt the budget as Councilman Christensen suggested, and not at all unusual either. In fact, more normal than the way we're doing it right now. Hopefully my third alternative wasn't some whiz-bang solution that I've now forgotten to the whole question.
And just a point of order, we haven't had a second to the motion yet.
Could you repeat the motion? Is that?
To adopt the tentative budget as presented in our packet with the addition of the current year items, or this next year items, on the spreadsheet that was presented to us last week.
Second.
Now all of our previous discussion is viable.
So we have made reference to a document that is not included in our materials.
This week. It was last week.
It's not included in our agenda. Do you recall what all of those items were? And should we be presenting those here and actually have that included as a part of this motion?
If I could help out the councilman, Mayor, which I wouldn't even remember what they are, much less probably an individual council member, but I would guess, and I'm going to put Jake here on the spot, but he probably has that spreadsheet file either on his computer now or accessible if you wanted to see those and discuss those numbers individually.
Or just attach it to this.
Or just attach it to the, as an amendment, to the tentative budget as it's shown right now. I can say from a general standpoint, the general fund budget itself, addition was 2.8 something million. So it was 2,800,000 plus some change on the recommended additions.
2,856,569.
There you go.
I'm reading it.
In conjunction with that, Councilman Christensen, what is your intent to accomplish with this that couldn't be done otherwise? We will talk about these at a later date, in fact, in much more detail than we will tonight.
And at this point, the proposed budget is a public document. This one is not. And I think the public needs to know what we need to, so that they can, on August 9th, come informed.
Is there anything about that other document that is not public? It was included in our agenda at our previous study meeting and is available to everyone in the public, isn't it, Mr. Pyle?
I will have to clarify, and this is the point I got caught on last week. It wasn't in the actual agenda packet. I just submitted it in presentation, and then I submitted it to the council by email after. It is available to the public at this point. Anybody could have access to it, but it's not in the packet.
So no one in the public has ever seen the document, the information that we're voting on,
Unless
I
they
don't
did
know
study
about that.
session and watched the presentation.
unless they watched it. So actually, it almost seems like you're doing exactly the opposite, in my mind, of what you're hoping to do. Because we will have already taken a tentative vote on it, and no one has seen it. Now, is there any reason we couldn't vote on that at any point in the future between now and August 9th?
Let me ask that question, Mayor. I actually pondered that question myself in terms of you have a set statutory required numbers of public hearings and adoptions, but I don't know that that necessarily prevents you from adding further formal consideration, public hearings, or actual additional tentative adoptions of budgets. I asked my finance director a similar question earlier. I haven't asked the city attorney that. We probably would have to go back and do some research for you.
So Mayor, for myself, I'm not comfortable attaching this to the motion. It's either accept the tentative or not, but I wouldn't, myself, I'm not comfortable having this attached to the tentative approval tonight.
Well, the motion is to
To
approve it
attach
and
it.
attach it. It was
Mhm.
both, right? And we could vote on the motion and go
Well,
on that.
I'm not sure, because as it was clarified by Mr. Pyle, there's a couple of options there. And it was that you actually adopt that. And so, see, it's one thing if you say you want to post that information and make it public and remind everyone from this meeting that they can review that and that we will be voting on those in the future. You know, I don't see any problem with that. But to actually adopt it as part of the budget, yeah, I would have concerns. So what was your intent, Mr. Christensen?
To attach it as, you know, when we talk about a budget, we also talk about projections. When I talk about my budget at home, this is what I have, this is what I'd like to do with it, not just what I'm doing. This is the additional that I would like to do, and that's what I want to do, is put that additional we'd like to do in with the budget so we can see what it is.
So you actually want to modify the numbers here to include those numbers?
Either that or put it on as an addendum
Well,
sheet to the budget.
whichever one you want to do, I just need to clarify which way you want it so that it's clear to the council what they're voting on. Do you want that list to go in and modify the numbers in our current budget to reflect those new numbers with those included? Or do you want to adopt or approve this tentative budget and then publish the list that we will be considering as possibilities for addition in the future?
I think it's that,
Excuse me, just a minute.
Okay.
I need him to clarify his motion so we know which of those do you want?
I don't think we need to change the numbers on the proposed budget, proposed tentative budget at this point. But I think we need to have in mind with that proposed tentative budget, those additional expenses that we may have.
Okay.
And therefore, I would put it on as an additional sheet or whatever needs to be done with the budget as it's put out. It's a public document, people can pick it up, but this one hasn't been
Okay, let me see if I
attached
can,
yet to that, so we don't know what we're looking at as a future for the public.
let's see if I can state it then. Your motion would be that we adopt the tentative budget. And second, that we publish.
And attach.
I'm not quite sure what attach means, but it's an staple, publish at the same time. It's a separate document, and I just need to make clear that it's a separate document that you want available to the public, and that we publish it at the same time as a document we will consider in the future.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does that make sense to the council? So, I guess A, his motion is to approve the budget, the tentative budget as is. B, then, his motion states that we would publish the other document to be available in the same location, but not adopt that as a part of the budget.
Not directly as a part of the adopt it as ideas that we can put into the budget, so that as we're discussing them, the public knows we're discussing them also.
Well, I think that's very clear from putting them together, in the same location. But I think it needs to be very clear that they're not adopted, but that they are items for consideration. And there is no guarantee that all of those items will be adopted, or that they will be the only items adopted in the future.
Well, that's why it's a proposed budget that we're adopting and attaching it to. Is the proposal. These are the proposals.
Well, you own the motion, so I'll turn back to you and say, restate it.
For a fourth time.
Well, and maybe a fifth. I don't know.
I would move that we adopt the proposed tentative budget with the addition of these other items that Mr. Pyle has presented to us as possible needs during the coming year, because they are all needs that will be coming up in that budget, and make it all one document.
I think it's in fiscal year, not common year.
In the fiscal year.
Fiscal year.
Coming fiscal year.
Yeah. That's the second.
Call the vote.
Yeah.
Just call the vote. Okay. Seeing no further discussion, we'll place that for a vote to our city recorder.
Councilman Vincent?
No.
Councilwoman Lang?
No.
Councilman Bueller?
No.
Councilman Hune?
Yes.
Councilman Christensen?
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt?
No.
Mayor Bigelow?
No.
Motion fails.
Mayor, move to accept the tentative budget as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. It's properly before us. Further discussion. Seeing no further discussion, we'll place that for a vote.
Councilman Nordfelt?
Yes.
Councilman Christensen?
No.
Councilman Hune?
No.
Councilman Bueller?
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang?
Yes.
Councilman Vincent?
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes by majority.
Thank you very much. With that, get back to the agenda. I believe that completes our business for tonight. Any final comments from the council before we adjourn our regular meeting? Seeing no further comments, then one last motion for this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed say no. Motion passes unanimously. The regular session of our council is adjourned.
I call to order the special meeting of the West Valley City Redevelopment Agency. Note that all members of the agency are present. Mr. Powell, we have two resolutions on the agenda today. Would you please introduce Resolution 16-08?
Thank you, sir. The first resolution would be to consider an amendment to the ADL, or Agreement for Disposition of Land. for the, sorry, I lost my place here. It's concerning the Fairborn Station project, but it's with Granger Hunter Improvement District to construct a sewer and curb cut and drive approaches for 2 driveways in that project.
To the council, we have this item for action.
Chairman, I move for approval of Resolution 1608.
Second.
A motion and a couple of seconds. Any discussion? And we'll call a vote, please.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mr. Bigelow?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Nordfeld?
Yes.
And Chairman Bueller.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Our second item of business is 1609, the tentative budget. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, sir. Don't have any detailed comment on this other than just to mention that similar to the last meeting, this is the tentative budget adoption for the redevelopment agency.
And if I'm recalling correctly, there wouldn't have been any future action items that would have been included in projections that we might.
No, sir. This budget is as we would recommend for final adoption in the future.
We have item 16-09 and that resolution before us.
Move for approval of Resolution 16-09.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's call the vote.
Mr. Nordfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Bigelow?
Aye.
Mr. Kuhn?
Aye.
Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
And Chairman Bueller.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
We have no further business.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Call to order the special meeting of the Housing Authority. Is this the right order? Note that we have had an opening ceremony and all are present. We have one resolution to adopt a tentative budget. This is one similar, I'm sorry. Again, this is a resolution to adopt a tentative budget similar to the ones in our previous meetings. Anything you have to add to that, Mr. Platt?
No, sir. This also is requested and recommended in the form that we would hope for or recommend in a final adoption status.
Thank you.
So clarify, so that my question of, is it tentative or final that we're going to?
They're tentative, sir.
It's a tentative budget. Okay.
There is a difference. That's actually a question that might be of interest to the public in that when we adopt the final budgets for the Housing Authority, Redevelopment Agency, and Building Authority, we actually do that before the general fund or the general operating budget because of the property tax hearings, truth and taxation hearing in that question. So they'll actually come before you in June as opposed to August.
And there are public hearings that we need to do before that final
Yes.
budget.
Yes, this will have a public hearing set for June 7th. All right. To the Housing Authority.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of resolution 16-02.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I will turn to our recorder for the vote.
Mr. Vincent?
Yes.
Ms. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Bueller?
Aye.
Mr. Kuhn?
Yes.
Mr. Bigelow?
Aye.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
And Chairman Nordfeld.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you. That concludes our business. One final motion.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. We're adjourned.
I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Building Authority of West Valley City. Note that we've had an opening ceremony, roll call, and all members are present. We have 2 resolutions tonight. Mr. Pyle, would you please explain 16-02?
Yes, thank you, sir. The item that we discussed in the general meeting, the $36 million of possible refinance and additional bonds for construction. Most of that is well, in fact, all of it would be considered under the Municipal Building Authority, or MBA, and therefore needs to be considered in the same way in the official Building Authority meeting. So we have before you the same resolution for consideration of $36 million in refunding and building bonds.
And this was the one that we continued to next week.
Yes, in the previous meeting it was
Previous
continued.
meeting.
Yes.
So I would open it to the council for a motion.
Ask a question, Mr. Pyle. Would it be out of line to act on this without the city council's approval? I mean, that matter was continued, so this matter would, of necessity, be continued as well.
I would think that would be the proper course, yes, sir.
I move for continuance for 1 week of Resolution 1602.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
Mr. Nordfeld,
Yes.
Mr. Bigelow,
Aye.
Mr. Hune,
Aye.
Mr. Bueller,
Aye.
Ms. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Vincent,
Yes.
and Chairman Christensen.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Pyle. Resolution 1603.
Thank you, sir. This is the tentative budget for the Building Authority, and we would submit it for your consideration under the same circumstances as we discussed in the redevelopment agency and in the Housing Authority budgets.
And it also has a public hearing date set for June 7th.
Yes, sir.
To the authority.
Mr. Chair, I move for approval of 16-03.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Vincent,
Yes.
Ms. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Bueller,
Aye.
Mr. Hune,
Aye.
Mr. Bigelow,
Aye.
Mr. Nordfeld,
Yes.
and Chairman Christensen.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
One more motion.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.